It was a Tuesday at the Gilded Fork, Midtown Atlanta's most expensive bistro. A place where a single salad costs more than a week's worth of groceries for the woman currently kneeling on the floor. Her name is Nia. She is 8 months pregnant, and she is currently being told she is less than human. Now, before I tell you how this man turned a Midtown restaurant into a courtroom of karma, check that subscribe button. On this channel, we believe that your value isn't found in your bank account but in how you treat those who can do absolutely nothing for you. You love stories where the humble rise from the ashes and the proud are brought to their knees. Hit that like and subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. Because the payback in today's story, it's not just legendary, it's life-changing. Now let's go back to where it's all begun. Standing over her is Tiffany Van der Wood, a woman whose jewelry could fund a small school. Tiffany didn't just want her steak sent back. She wanted Nia's soul. She wanted Nia to understand that her pregnancy was an eyesore, that her slow pace was a disgrace to the establishment, and that a person of her class shouldn't be allowed to breathe the same filtered air. Nia didn't fight back. She couldn't. Her feet were swollen, her back was screaming, and she needed this job to pay for the tiny life kicking inside her. But as the first sob broke through Nia's lips, a sound of pure, exhausted heartbreak, the entire restaurant went cold. Tiffany laughed. Oh, now she's crying? Someone call the health inspector. Don't want tears in my Pinot Noir. But then from the very back table, the one near the kitchen door where the ordinary people sit, a man stood up. He wasn't wearing a $2,000 suit. He didn't have a Rolex. He was wearing a faded hoodie and work boots. But when he walked toward the center of the room, every wealthy socialite in that building stopped breathing. Because they didn't see a poor man. They saw the one person in Atlanta who could make them all disappear with a single phone call. Life-changing. Let me take you back to where it all began. Long before the wine was spilled. And long before Nia was a waitress on her knees. Nia Amadi was 26 years old. She had moved to Atlanta from a small village outside Lagos, Nigeria 5 years ago. She came with a degree in biochemistry, a heart full of hope, and $400 sewn into the lining of her suitcase. Her dream was to work in a lab to develop medicines that her home village could actually afford. But dreams in America cost more than Nia realized. Her credentials weren't recognized. The land of opportunity felt more like a land of not hiring. To survive, Nia took 2 jobs. By day, she cleaned office buildings in Buckhead. By night, she was a waitress at the Gilded Fork. He worked 80 hours a week, her hands perpetually smelling of bleach and dish soap. Then came David. David was a consultant she met at a bus stop. He was charming. He talked about building a kingdom together, and for the first time in Nia's life she felt seen. She thought she had found her partner. But 3 months into the pregnancy, Nia came home to an empty apartment. David was gone. Along with David went Nia's savings, her laptop, and even the gold earrings her mother had given her as a parting gift. He left a note on the kitchen counter. I didn't sign up for a family. Signed up for a good time. Good luck with the eyesore. Nia didn't have time to mourn a broken heart. She had a child to protect. By her 7th month, the cleaning job became too much. Her blood pressure was climbing. The doctor told her she needed bed rest, but Nia knew that rest was a luxury for people with safety nets. She had no family in the city. No friends who could spare $1. It was Nia and the baby against the world. She begged the manager at the Gilded Fork, a man named Gerald who valued $1 more than a human life, to let her keep her shifts. The customers don't like looking at distended waitresses, Nia, Gerald had said, looking at her bump with disgust. It ruins the aesthetic of a high-end dining experience. People come here to feel beautiful, not to be reminded of reality. I'll wear a larger apron, sir, Nia pleaded. I'll stay in the back. I'll work the late shifts. Please. I have no one else. Gerald let her stay, but only under one condition. She would take the overflow tables, the ones that didn't tip well, and she would never, under any circumstances, speak unless spoken to. Nia agreed. Every night she would put on her support hose, wrap her belly in a tight band to hide the eyesore, and walk the floor for 10 hours. He lived on leftover bread from the kitchen and the hope that her daughter would have a better life. To her neighbors in her cramped apartment in Buckhead, Nia was the quiet girl. They saw her leaving at 4 p.m. and returning at 3 a.m., her face pale, her gait heavy. They didn't know she was a scientist. They didn't know she could explain the molecular structure of the wine she was serving. They saw Waitress. And then came the Tuesday that changed everything. The Gilded Fork was hosting a power lunch for the city's elite. Tiffany Van der Wood had reserved the center table. Tiffany was the daughter of a real estate mogul and the wife of a hedge fund manager. She wore a white silk suit that cost more than Nia's annual salary. Tiffany was having a bad day. Her hairstylist had been 10 minutes late and her Tesla had a smudge on the rim. She arrived at the restaurant looking for someone to bleed on. And Nia was the easiest target. Water, Tiffany snapped before Nia could even greet her. And not the tap. Garbage. I want Voss. Room temperature. If I see a single bead of condensation on that glass, I'm sending it back. Nia nodded, her breath shallow. The restaurant was humid and she felt a sharp pain in her lower back. The kind of pain she had been ignoring for 3 days. Of course, ma'am. Right away. As Nia turned to walk away, her foot caught on the edge of Tiffany's designer handbag, which was sitting in the middle of the aisle. Nia stumbled. He didn't fall, but her hand brushed against the back of Tiffany's chair. Tiffany let out a shriek as if she'd been burned. Did you just touch me? Gerald. Gerald, come here right now. Gerald appeared in seconds, bowing like a servant. Is there a problem, Mrs. Van der Wood? This thing touched my chair. With its filthy hands. And look at her. She's practically a whale. It's disgusting. I'm trying to eat and I have to. Look at her condition. Nia felt the blood drain from her face. I'm so sorry, ma'am. It is tripped on the bag. I didn't mean. Don't talk to me, Tiffany hissed. You're a servant. You're a vessel. You're lucky we even let people like you in the door. Gerald, why is she still in my sight? Gerald turned to Nia, his eyes cold. Nia, go to the back. No. I'll deal with your termination after the shift. Termination. The word rang in Nia's ears like a death knell. She lost this job, she lost her apartment. If she lost her apartment, she lost her baby. Please, sir, Nia whispered, her voice cracking. I need the insurance. 8 months. I don't care if you're 10 months, Tiffany interrupted, a cruel smile on her face. You're a failure. You couldn't even keep a man to pay for that kid. Curly. Now get out before I make sure you never work in this city again. It was the comment about her man that broke Nia. The exhaustion, the hunger, the fear, and the sheer cruelty of a woman who had everything attacking a woman who had nothing. Nia's knees buckled. Not because she wanted to, but because her body simply gave. She sank to the floor, her hands clutching her stomach, and she began to cry. Not a loud cry, but a silent, shaking sob of a woman who has reached the end of her rope. The restaurant went silent. The clinking of silverware stopped. Tiffany rolled her eyes. Oh, give me a break. The drama is. That's enough. The voice came from the back. It wasn't loud, but it had the weight of a. Oh. Everyone turned. The man at the back table stood up. He was tall, with dark skin and a beard that hadn't been trimmed in a week. His hoodie was stained with what looked like grease. He looked like a mechanic who had wandered into the wrong building. Tiffany laughed. And who are you? Her brother? Her lawyer? Sit down, Sparky. This doesn't concern the help. The man didn't sit down. He started walking. Every step he took was deliberate. He didn't look at Tiffany. He looked at Nia. He reached her, knelt down, ignoring the wine on the floor, and took Nia's hand. Stand up, Nia, he said softly. I'm fired, Nia sobbed. I have nothing. You have everything, the man replied. He looked up at Tiffany, and for the first time the socialite felt a chill of genuine fear. Because the man's eyes weren't the eyes of a mechanic. They were the eyes of a predator. My name, the man said, looking at the entire room, is Elias Thorne. The name hit the room like a bomb. Elias Thorne. The ghost of Atlanta. The billionaire venture capitalist who owned 60% of the real estate in Midtown, including the very building they were sitting in. The man who had disappeared from the public eye 3 years ago to focus on philanthropy, and was rumored to dress like a commoner to see how his businesses were actually being run. Tiffany's mouth opened but no sound came out. Gerald's face went from pale to gray. "I've been sitting here for 40 minutes, Elias said, his voice dangerously calm. "I watched Nia serve 12 tables without a single complaint. I watched her bring you extra napkins before you even asked. And then I watched you try to destroy a human being because you were bored." He looked at Gerald. "Gerald, you're the manager here?" "Yes, Mr. Thorne. I didn't know." "I know you didn't. That's the problem. You only treat people well when you think they have power. You just fired a woman for being pregnant? For being eyesore?" Elias pulled a phone from his pocket and pressed a single button. "Marcus? Yeah. Cancel the lease for the Gilded Fork. Effective immediately. Violation of the human rights clause in the building contract. Yeah. Tell the owner his restaurant is closed." As of 5 minutes ago. The silence in the restaurant was so heavy you could hear the ice melting in Tiffany's wine glass. Gerald, a man who had spent his career bowing to the rich and stepping on the poor, was currently shaking so hard his tie was vibrating. "Mr. Thorne, eyes, please," Gerald stammered, his voice reaching a pitch only dogs could hear. I was protecting the brand. You understand? Branding. You can't have a human being working for you?" Elias interrupted. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. "You're right, Gerald. You won't have anyone working for you. Because by the time the sun sets today, your name will be blacklisted from every hospitality group in the Southeast. You didn't just fail as a manager today. You failed as a man." Elias turned his gaze to Tiffany. She was trying to hide behind her oversized designer sunglasses, her hands clutching her $5,000 Hermes bag as if it were a shield. "And you," Elias said. The word felt like a physical blow. "Tiffany Van der Wood. I know your father, Harrison. I know he's currently looking for a lead investor for his new stadium project in Buckhead. I was supposed to have a meeting with him tomorrow morning to sign the check." Tiffany's eyes widened. The arrogance began to leak out of her face, replaced by a gray, sickly desperation. "Mr. Thorne, I had a very stressful morning. My stylist. Your stylist was late. My heart bleeds," Elias said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Call your father, Tiffany. Tell him the stadium deal is dead. Tell him his daughter's stressful morning just cost his company $300 million. And tell him that if I ever see your face in a place that serves the public again, I'll start calling in his business loans." Tiffany began to hyperventilate. The woman who had just called Nia dirt was now looking at the exit like a trapped animal. She didn't wait for her check. She didn't grab her coat. She fled. She ran out of the restaurant, her high heels clicking frantically on the marble, a sound of pure, unadulterated defeat. Elias didn't watch her leave. He was already back on his knees next to Nia. "Nia," he said, his voice returning to that gentle, steady hum. "I didn't come here to close a restaurant. I came here to find you." Nia looked at him through tear-blurred eyes. "Find me? I'm just a waitress, Mr. Thorne. I'm nobody." "No," Elias said, reaching into his hoodie pocket and pulling out a folded piece of paper. It was a copy of a research paper, the one Nia had written in Lagos before she moved to America. A paper on low-cost synthetic insulin production. "You are Dr. Nia Amadi. And you are exactly the person Thorne Medical has been looking for." Most stories would end there. But life isn't a fairy tale, it's a marathon. And Nia Amadi was finally ready to run. Elias Thorne didn't just give Nia a job. He gave her back the life that the world had tried to steal. That night, Nia didn't go back to her cramped apartment in Buckhead. Elias's assistant had already moved her things into a quiet, sun-drenched corporate suite near Piedmont Park. There were no roaches, no leaky ceilings, just the sound of the wind in the trees and the first night of peaceful sleep Nia had experienced in 5 years. 6 weeks later, Nia gave birth to a beautiful baby girl she named Hope. And Hope didn't grow up in the back of a restaurant. He grew up in the halls of the Thorn Research Center. Nia didn't just work there, she led the department. Within a year, Nia's research had been patented. She went from earning $2.13 an hour plus tips to being the head of a multi-million-dollar medical division. She swapped her stained apron for a white lab coat. She swapped her support hose for the finest silk. But Nia didn't change who she was. She still woke up at 5 a.m. She still prayed every morning. He still remembered the feeling of the cold floor at the Gilded Fork. She used her first bonus to set up a foundation for pregnant migrant workers, ensuring that no woman would ever have to choose between her dignity and her child's dinner. And Elias stayed in the background. He wasn't looking for a trophy. He was looking for a partner. He watched Nia thrive not because of his money but because of her own brilliance. He had simply been the one to clear the weeds so the flower could grow. But what about the people who tried to stomp on that flower? Karma, my friends, has a very long memory. 1 year to the day after the incident at the restaurant, the city of Atlanta held its annual Women in Science Gala. It was the most exclusive event of the year. Nia was the keynote speaker. She arrived in a custom-made gold gown that complemented her dark skin perfectly. She looked like royalty because she was the woman who had developed a breakthrough that would save millions of lives. As she stood in the lobby of the Ritz-Carlton, she saw a woman working the coat. The woman was wearing a cheap, ill-fitting uniform. Her hair was messy and her eyes were fixed on the floor, avoiding the gaze of the wealthy guests. It was Tiffany. After Elias pulled the funding from her father's project, the Van der Wood empire had folded like a house of cards. A series of lawsuits and a very public scandal involving her husband's hedge fund had stripped Tiffany of everything. The mansions were gone. The Teslas were repossessed. Her friends had vanished the moment the champagne ran out. Now Tiffany was the one taking coats for $12 an hour. Nia walked up to the counter. Tiffany didn't look up at first. Coat check, please. Tag number. I don't have a tag yet, Nia said quietly. Tiffany froze. She recognized that voice. She slowly looked up and for a moment the world stopped turning. She saw Nia. Not the eyesore in a stained apron but a titan of industry. A woman dripping in elegance and power. Nia. Tiffany whispered, her face turning a deep, shameful red. Nia didn't scream. She didn't mock her. She didn't call for a manager. Nia reached into her silk clutch, pulled out $100 bill and placed it on the counter. Keep the change, Tiffany, Nia said softly. I know how hard it is to stand on your feet all day. I hope your morning has been less stressful than mine was. Tiffany's eyes filled with tears, not the fake tears of a socialite but the hot, burning tears of a woman who finally realized how small she had been. Nia walked away, her head held high, joining Elias who was waiting for her at the entrance of the ballroom. As they walked in, the entire room stood up and began to applaud. Not for her money, not for her gown, but for her heart. And that, my friends, is the lesson of today's tale. The world will try to tell you that your value is based on what you have, but the truth is, your value is based on what you give. Harrison Van der Wood lost a stadium because his daughter was cruel. Gerald lost a career because he was a coward. But Nia Amadi gained a kingdom because she remained kind even when the world was throwing stones. Remember, a river does not drink its own water. A tree does not eat its own fruit. We are here to serve one another. And the next time you see someone struggling, someone who looks less than, remember Nia. Remember Elias. Because you never know when you are in the presence of a queen in a waitress's apron. If this story moved your heart, if it reminded you that the humble shall be exalted, then don't forget to like, comment, karma is real, and subscribe for more stories of the rising spirit. Because on this channel we know that every tale has a lesson, and modernist Africa folktale never forget. Until next time, stay humble, stay kind, and keep watching the back table. You never know who's sitting there.